I also read my namesake, Catherine Maher, was head of NPR, and, she said, "We're completely unbiased. Give me a break, lady." Read the NPR. NPR said, "It sounds like Chappelle is using white privilege to excuse his homophobia and transphobia." Wait, now Dave Chappelle can have white privilege? I'm really confused now.
Bill Maher has officially turned his fire toward NPR as the outlet faces growing accusations of leaning heavily toward the Democratic Party. Many expected Maher, who often aligns with liberal politics, to defend them. Instead, he did the opposite. He questioned NPR's credibility head-on, surprising viewers across the spectrum. For fans of unfiltered political commentary, this moment hit hard and sparked serious debate.
PBS testified before Congress this week amid accusations of liberal bias. Should the government continue to send taxpayer dollars to public broadcasters? Well, a little background here. I mean, they've been after them the Republicans have wanted to get rid of PBS for as long as I can remember. This crowd will probably do it. I mean, I also read my namesake, Catherine Maher, was head of NPR, and she said, "We're completely unbiased. Give me a break, lady." I mean, they're crazy far left.
That's classic Bill Maher, saying what others hesitate to admit. According to him, NPR isn't just slightly left-leaning. It's firmly planted on the far left while still claiming neutrality. And that's where he draws the line. Maher argues that bias isn't the real problem, pretending it doesn't exist is. Claiming objectivity while consistently promoting one worldview, he says, insults the audience's intelligence. What makes the criticism powerful is that it's coming from someone politically adjacent, not an outsider throwing partisan punches.
I mean, I think we're past the age, really, where the government, first of all, why do we need to subsidize? Why can't we have outlets like this? And we're so polarized. These outlets became popular at a time when Republicans and Democrats didn't hate each other and weren't at each other's throats and didn't think each other was an existential threat. In that world, you can't have places like this, I think, anymore. They have to be private.
Maher also raises concerns about government funding. When a media outlet receives taxpayer money, questions about independence naturally follow. Even without direct pressure, the perception alone can erode public trust. That's why Maher believes privatization makes sense. In today's hyperpolarized climate, a publicly funded outlet claiming neutrality carries heavy risks. Going private wouldn't silence NPR. It would force it to rely solely on its credibility and audience support.
I think Yuri Berliner, ex-NPR employer, his piece this week, where he said that they should just let go of the funding. I love NPR. I listen to NPR almost every day, have since 1975, when my parents used to play it in our Chevrolet Caprice when I was like 9 years old. I love it for its point of view, but since 2020, it has no longer been general. I remember in 2021, my then 9-year-old asked me, and of course she has no sense of context, I don't pump her full of things like this. She said from the back seat, in a very different car, she said, "Daddy, why is it that NPR is always playing the same thing?" And I said, "What do you mean the same thing?" And I swear she said, now she doesn't have a vocabulary, but she said, "It's always about how somebody can't do something."
Controversy intensified after revelations about NPR's edited interview with Kamala Harris. Editing interviews isn't unusual, but critics argue this went further than routine trimming. Leaked footage suggested that responses were restructured in ways that may have altered their tone and impact. At that point, critics say, editing becomes narrative shaping. For skeptics, the incident reinforced suspicions that NPR frames coverage in ways that favor certain political figures.
What she was getting at was that I wouldn't have said that about the NPR that I knew back in the day, and I wouldn't have said it 10 years ago, but that is what it is now. I will listen to it daily, but it's no longer a general audience venue. They should just give up national funding. Yeah.
Maher believes the solution is simple. If NPR wants to lean politically, it should do so as a private entity. Audiences understand that private networks carry bias. Fox News leans right. MSNBC leans left. That's expected. But NPR presents itself as a neutral public service while accepting taxpayer funding from Americans across the political spectrum. Maher argues that this contradiction is the real issue. Privatization would remove the illusion and replace it with transparency.
Reviews. I'm just going to read this one from NPR. It's because the reviews from the critics so at variance with the audience. Rotten Tomatoes, that's a amalgam of reviews. I think in this case 7. His special got a 43%. Audience 95. Says a lot about the differentiation between real people and the
here. Maher points to NPR's coverage of Dave Chappelle as another example. After Chappelle faced backlash for jokes about the transgender community, NPR highlighted a harsh critical review that rated his special 4 out of 10. What received less attention was the audience score, a strong 9 out of 10. To Maher, this wasn't just criticism. It was selective framing. Amplifying elite disapproval while minimizing public support creates the impression of guiding listeners toward a preferred conclusion.
I don't have any problem with Latinx, but it doesn't seem to be making any inroads into the communities where most Latinx people live. And so you have this sort of educated dialect way of thinking. And that's the case here, where all of these people, I think, to get back to this simplicity idea, they see that Dave Chappelle is a comedian. There are layers of wit and irony and attitude going on. And instead, we're told to just read it as if it was the Three Bears, and we're being told that that's sophisticated, when really that means that these people who are, so annoyed that anybody says some words or expresses some ideas are saying that most of America aren't sophisticated. And yet, last time I checked, they were arguing on the basis of this.
Maher and his guests argue that modern woke policing thrives on performance rather than substance. In their view, outrage often becomes theater, more about being seen as morally righteous than solving real issues. They claim controversies are amplified for optics, not impact. For them, this reflects activism driven by visibility and virtue signaling rather than accountability or lived experience.
That because you don't agree with what he said, which again, I don't think is transphobic. A lot of the special is about how he has this friendship with a trans person who is his opening act.
At its core, Maher's argument is about responsibility. Comedy, he says, doesn't create social tension, it reflects it. Blaming comedians is an easy shortcut for media outlets chasing outrage. Instead of engaging in deeper cultural conversations, they target entertainers as symbolic villains. Maher believes that isn't journalism. It's moral panic packaged as critique.
Let me read the NPR. NPR said, it sounds like Chappelle is using white privilege to excuse his homophobia and transphobia. Wait, now Dave Chappelle can have white privilege? I'm really confused now.
This is why Maher ultimately argues NPR should be defunded. In one critique, NPR suggested Dave Chappelle was operating from white privilege, a framing many saw as absurd given his background and life experience. To Maher, that wasn't just a bad take, it was ideological language overriding reality. When taxpayer-funded outlets adopt activist terminology in ways that appear forced, public trust declines. His broader argument isn't about defending one comedian. It's about media integrity. If neutrality becomes messaging, then reform, or privatization, becomes inevitable.